Okay, good afternoon, everyone. At this time, I would like to call to order the July 17, 2025 regular board meeting of the North County Transit District. Before we begin, members of the public who may be viewing the meeting on the district's YouTube page, please note that in order to make a public comment during the meeting, you must connect to the meeting using the Zoom link provided on the agenda. In addition, you must also register by sending an email containing your name or phone number and the agenda item on which you wish to speak about to clerk@nctd.org. Taylor Siwi, Deputy Clerk, will you take a verbal roll call, please?
Yes. Board Chair Bhat Patel, Vice Chair Sinella,
Here.
Board Member Martinez,
Here.
Board Member O'Hara, Board Member Garcia,
Present.
Board Member Joyce,
Present.
Board Member Desmond, Board Member Edson, Board Alternate Melendez,
Here.
Board Member Lee. This completes the roll. Board members Bhat Patel, Edson, O'Hara, Desmond, and Lee are absent.
Thank you, Taylor. Board Member Garcia, would you please lead us in the pledge? Thank you. Okay, Taylor will now provide us with our safety brief and review of our evacuation procedures.
In case of an emergency, I will dial 911. In case of an evacuation, please take the stairs. Do not use the elevators. Once cleared of the building, do not re-enter unless cleared to do so by emergency personnel. There are fire extinguishers and first aid kits on each floor of the building. There is a portable defibrillator on the first floor and staff on hand trained on CPR procedures if needed. This concludes my safety brief.
Thank you, Taylor. On to our, first, I guess I need to ask, are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, Vice Chair. The attachment for consent item number 3 was updated to include a contract that needs to have additional capacity processed during the time that NCTD will not have any board meetings. In regard to new board agenda item number 8, Government Code Section 54954.2 authorizes a legislative body to take action on items not appearing on the posted agenda upon a determination by a 2/3 vote of the members present at the meeting, or if fewer than 2/3 are present, a unanimous vote of those present that 1, there is a need to take immediate action, and 2, the need for action came to the attention of the local agency after the agenda was posted. After the agenda was posted for the July 17, 2025 meeting, staff became aware of an omission that from the FY 2022 classification and compensation schedule that requires immediate attention. Because the omission may affect retired employees' benefits and NCTD's compliance with California Code of Regulations 570.5, immediate action is necessary to ratify the corrected schedule and maintain regulatory compliance. A revised agenda and errata sheet was sent to the board, and it has been updated on the NCTD website for public inspection.
Great, thank you for that update. Moving right along.
Sorry, Vice Chair. Let the record show that O'Hara arrived at 2:02 p.m.
Welcome, Jim. Taylor, do we have any general public comments today?
Yes, Vice Chair.
Okay, could you please call the speakers for us?
Yes, Ms. Castellanos, you have 3 minutes. Yes.
So, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Anita. I lived in the city of Vista for the past 8 years. I've taken public transportation my whole life. I've come today to just tell you guys thank you so very much for implementing the NCTD Plus bus in the city of Vista. We have some good workers in the morning. They pick me up either like right outside my house or just down the street. And also the afternoon, people are really nice. It's the same people every day. I feel so much safer going to my employment and coming back home. I'm fortunate enough to get the NCTD Pronto Disability Card, PTSD, from something that happened in my younger years. However, I find that I feel so much safer. I have like a new life. I'm not so much scared anymore on public transportation. So I'm also very thankful to hear that we're not outsourcing our work to like a third party. So like being native to San Diego, like I've seen the streets and I know what it's like to be out there, and I just feel so much better that you guys have offered this to us. And so I'm thankful. I'm like, yay. You know, it's important to us as the community to be safe and happy. Also, I just have a couple requests for alleviation of finances for those of us that do get the Pronto Disability Medical Senior Card. Maybe we could add more money, just a little bit, you know, financials on that. The safety, the doors are heavy on the buses, on the NCTD Plus buses. So automatic doors would be beneficial to everybody because sometimes they're on a decline or incline and the doors are heavy. If we can expand the borders a little bit further out, possibly to like by the DMV in Vista or Oceanside area, that would be helpful to get me to my house, to my employment, and back safely, and I don't have to take another bus and be on the streets any longer than I have to. Also, in regards to the people that are working these buses are really nice and sweet. Mainly the ones in the afternoon, they get so busy that sometimes, you know, it's important that they get their lunches and breaks, you know. And other than that, I'm just so thankful. I am so thankful that I can return home to my family, feel safe. I'm not crying because I just, you know, went through like a battlefield out there. And I'm just thankful for everybody that came here. There's a lot of people here. Hi, everybody. So other than that, like I said, I'm a San Diego native. I'm very proud to still be here, and this is amazing. Like just being here is amazing, and it's so new. But thank you everybody that's heard me, and you guys are just doing amazing. So thank you.
Well, thank you for coming, and thank you for the feedback. And I did see staff taking some notes on what you were commenting on, so thank you. Any other speakers?
There are no further speakers, and let the record show that Board Member Edson arrived at 2:05 p.m.
Great. Okay, at this time, public registration to provide general public comment will end. Just going to go over some of our protocols. Before we proceed, I have a couple of quick protocol items to share. First, I will ask board members to please hold your comments and questions until after each agenda item has been presented. Second, when the time comes for board member questions or comments, please raise your hand and wait until you are called upon to speak. Third, please turn on and speak into your microphone when it is your turn to speak. This will ensure that your comments are heard for those listening online. And lastly, when it's time to vote, Taylor will call a verbal vote for us. Okay, our next item is our minutes from the last meeting. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Martinez and a motion by O'Hara, and then a second by Martinez. Can we have a vote, please?
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? On the motion of Board Member O'Hara, seconded by Board Member Martinez, to approve the minutes for the regular board meeting on June 26, 2025, motion passes. Board Members Bhat Patel and Desmond absent.
Thank you. Moving on to our consent calendar, there are 8 items on the consent agenda for action today. Taylor, have any members of the public requested or registered to speak on the consent or requested that any consent items be pulled?
No, they have not.
At this time, we are ending the public registration to speak on the consent items. Do any of my colleagues wish to pull any of the items on the consent? Right?
I just had a question about
Sure.
one of the items.
Please.
I was actually, item 1, I was just wondering if you could expand on the, if we could ask the CEO to expand on what the Positive Train Control Rail Safety Enhancement Project is and how we're going to use that money.
Yeah, so we have a few different projects going on in relation to positive train control. One of them is specific to signalization. If the board doesn't know, we have like a PTC .01. In fact, we were the first, I believe, the first passenger rail in the nation to have positive train control. So when they put all that in, it wasn't as robust as it is in our current setting where fiber was run between the signal boxes and the track. So there are a lot of things that we deal with that a lot of agencies don't in terms of when we have shunting on the track, sometimes we get false positives that get sent back, and then we're on a speed restriction until we can figure out what the issue is. A lot of these signalization upgrades and PTC upgrades are just bringing in newer technology, really managing those on a one-for-one. Some of them are grants that we receive from the government, specifically along the Sprinter line. We're kind of doing it a chunk at a time, so we'll get $10 million from the government or a combination of state and government money, and we kind of work them in chunks. So right now, we're working from Oceanside to pretty close to Vista, maybe a little bit toward Melrose. But that's what a lot of that is just general upkeep and kind of moving toward the newer PTC model that's out there.
That's great. I appreciate the answer. I was sorting through that and just trying to figure, I know we do an amazing job moving forward, and I loved seeing, and I thought that's what it was, and I appreciate the answer, that we're also managing the systems we have and always updating and improving those. So thank you, appreciate it.
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation when we're at the rail conference because having the very first one on the passenger side has been a little bit of an adventure. People have really taken what we built, and it's a good system. Our team internally, I think, has done a good job of managing the OG, and other systems have built off of that and built some pretty good platforms. And for us, it's just kind of going back and replacing things that like newer fiber and directly connecting signal boxes to the line itself or station houses. And so there's just a lot of places where we could improve what we originally had down almost a decade ago.
Fantastic. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, or I didn't see anybody who wanted to pull any items, so we'll go ahead and entertain a motion to approve.
Move approval of consent.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Edson and a second by O'Hara. Taylor, can we have a verbal vote, please?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? On the motion of Board Member Edson, seconded by Board Member O'Hara to approve the consent items 1 through 8, motion passes. Board Members Bhat Patel and Desmond absent.
Great, thank you. And before we move on to our first informational item, number 9, I have a planned flight, and a departure, so I'm going to turn over the reins to Board Member Martinez. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, now we'll go to an information item on the agenda. The next item will be an overview of Sandag's draft 2025 regional plan. NCTD's Director of Service Planning, Katie Pearsons, accompanied by Sandag's Jennifer Williamson and Brian Lane, will provide a presentation. However, I see Mario here, so we're very pleased to have you here. So Katie, Jennifer, Brian, Mario, whoever will be presenting, we look forward to this.
Great, thank you so much. Good afternoon. So Sandag staff will provide an overview of the 2025 draft regional plan and a little bit of background information about the regional plan. We then have a few slides about NCTD staff's input into that plan and NCTD's priorities. So with that, I will hand it over to Sandag staff.
Thank you for having us here first and foremost. The team will be presenting what the regional plan is, where we are with it. Again, we're really appreciative. You're the owner or operator of a system that we include in the regional plan. We work hand in glove with you, so we do need to take in consideration always what the owner or operator can do and cannot do. And that's a little bit of the basis of the regional plan. Our regional planning covers the entire county of San Diego, multiple modes of transportation. It's a vision that changes or gets tweaked every 4 years, and it's to meet certain requirements of the federal and state government. But I don't want to steal the team's thunder and I'll let them, and I'll let them continue, and then at the end, we'll wrap up, and we'll be open to any comments or questions that you may have.
Great. I was told I get to use this microphone, so tell me if you have any issues. I'm Jennifer Williamson. I'm the Deputy Director of Mobility Planning at Sandag, and I'm joined today with my colleague Bryden Lane, who works on our team. I'm going to give you an overview of the 2025 Regional Plan. So today, we're going to go through a few items. What is Sandag? I'll go through that briefly. Probably the good stuff that you want to hear about, Brian's going to cover, and those are the specific projects within the plan. So what is Sandag? Sandag is the Metropolitan Planning Organization. We plan projects, so we plan not only transit projects, we plan highway projects, we plan climate initiatives, and a variety of other transportation-related projects. We build things. So for you guys, something you could think about is the Midcoast Trolley is something that we've built very recently. We preserve sensitive habitats. We've done a lot of work in the lagoons, and we provide programs and services. What we don't do, as Mario said, is operate service. So what makes the region unique? I'm sure you guys all know this, but San Diego County is very diverse. We have a number of cities and counties in the region. We also have the international border. We have a number of tribal governments that participate in our decision-making. And then we also have a variety of different entities that are involved in our plan. Oh, animated. So who's represented at Sandag? As I said, we have 18 cities and the County of San Diego that are represented, but also we have a wide number of advisory members that give us input. Folks like the airport, the Port of San Diego, and major stakeholders within the region are represented at Sandag. So what's the regional plan? It's important to note that the regional plan is a plan. It's not an implementation vehicle. So if you think about it, it's our long-term vision for how we're going to grow through 2050. We update it every 4 years, and the reason we do that is because things change. This region is not static. There's a lot of land use changes, technology is constantly changing, and transportation is changing. So we want to make sure that we encapsulate all of that every 4 years into the regional plan, so we have the most up-to-date data for our planning purposes. We work very, very closely with the jurisdictions and the transit operators to ensure that we have the latest land use policies, the latest planning assumptions, and that we include any projects or programs that the regions or the jurisdictions have asked us to include. So it's not just a transportation plan, though. It's really important to note that we, as I'll tell you in a minute, we get involved in other things as well: housing, land use assumptions. There's a wide number of things that contribute to the regional plan. Plan requirements, I'm just going to skip to the good part, and that is it's SB 375, which is a legislation that requires us to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 19% by 2035, and that's a heavy lift. So that's kind of our baseline for what we're trying to achieve in this plan. We also look at a wide variety of other things. As I said, it's not just a transportation plan. This plan is involved in housing. All of the region's housing assumptions and the regional housing needs assessment feed into the plan. Land use, all of the jurisdictions updated land use so that we understand, where all the densities are. That's a real driver for transit. And then additionally, we also look at vehicle miles traveled. So SB 375 looks at reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but it also asks us to reduce the amount of vehicle miles traveled throughout the region. And just to give you a feel for what that looks like, a lot of people think that we can resolve our greenhouse gas emissions through electric vehicles, and it's a good method, but it doesn't reduce our vehicles miles traveled because people are still traveling alone very often in their electric vehicles, and that contributes to congestion. So we've been out and about. We've been beating the bushes, if you will, and we've done a number of workshops. We've done a wide number of presentations, and we've gotten a lot of comments on the plan, as you see on the slide in front of you. Some of the themes we've heard is everybody wants to reduce congestion. The congestion is back to, post-COVID or pre-COVID levels, and we're seeing that on the freeways. I'm sure you have all seen it as well. We're also hearing that they would like transit to be faster and more frequent, so more service, basically. We're hearing that school connections, everybody wants school connections. There's been a real reduction in school bus service throughout this region, and kids are having a hard time getting there despite the Youth Opportunity Pass. Safety is a big consideration as well. So looking at our biking safety and our pedestrian connection to our transit centers. And then as well, microtransit is a very hot topic for this plan, if you will. Everybody is very interested in getting shuttles that can get them either to transit or directly to their destination. So this is our network. We're going to give you a little quiz at the end. No, we put this up here because there's a lot of information, hundreds and hundreds of projects. I want to let you know that if you are interested in looking at any specific project, we have an interactive map on the Sandag website that allows you to go in and click on every single thing you see on this graphic and get very detailed information about what that is, when it arrives in the plan, and what it is, what purpose it serves. This is our active transportation plan. It's also very intensive. So there's a lot of new local connections identified in the plan, as well as some new regional services, hundreds and hundreds of projects. So if you are interested in active transportation, I would encourage you to, again, go into our interactive tool, click on it, and figure out what piece of the puzzle that line represents. So as I said, the regional plan is not just about transportation. We used to call it the Regional Transportation Plan. The regional plan includes a wide variety of things. I should mention that this plan is very focused on implementation. What can we implement earlier? So we are very focused on, near-term implementation and safety. And these are the different policies and programs in the plan. And I'll have you guys look at it yourself, but again, safety, making sure the existing infrastructure is taken care of, and our climate continue to be ongoing themes. These are themes from our last regional plan as well. So now I'm going to turn it over to the good part and let Brian go over the North County highlights.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. Jump right in the regional plan on the website and in the PDFs that you can click into. Appendix A is the one with all the list of all the projects. You can really dive into that and get a list. We break out the projects into areas around the region, so North County is one of those, and I'll kind of go over the highlights of what's up here in North County, especially for transit improvements. I think you guys all know the Sprinter. We'd like to add enough double tracks so we could increase the frequencies on that. Grade separations is a big part of that. You won't see a actual list in here yet of which grade separations and when we will do. We're still working with transit operators down at MTS as well to do a prioritization of all the grade seps out there to see which ones we should prioritize. Mario will talk a little bit about the plans over the next 6 to 12 months of prioritization of a lot of the projects that come out of the regional plan and that we'll be working on, but this is definitely one of them. And I know you guys are working on identifying those that are most important. Another big part of the transit improvements for North County is just increasing the frequency on all the buses and Sprinters in the coaster, trolley down in the South Bay. This is the common thing we hear all the time from riders is, if you have $100 to spend, how would you like to spend it? Usually number one is, well, safety is always up there as well, but next is increasing the frequency and the number of routes out there. So that's a big part of the regional plan. And then we also hear from folks, as part of that safety and security, asking for upgrades to the amenities out there. So increased bathroom, shade, security. Rapid will continue to be a big part of our network. We have the rapid routes down in San Diego area already today, and we're planning some in the North County as well. Out of the 35 planned rapid projects in the county, 15 are in the North County area. A couple examples of these and highlights is the 483. That's a project we're currently just starting some planning on, working closely with Caltrans on the 1578 connector. This route would help provide some congestion relief for that actual work that they're doing. And this route would take riders from the Temecula area down to Escondido and San Marcos to hit the health areas and the school districts in that area. I think RTA, the Riverside Transportation Authority, used to have a couple routes that came down into San Diego, and with COVID, those routes went away. And so we've been hearing from the folks at San Marcos and Palomar to bring something like that back. Another route, and this is, I think, is one of the ones top on NCD's list of next routes to get going, would be a 494. These are just our numbers for our modeling. You guys may end up numbering themselves, and we're not even sure who may operate some of these. That 483, that's a common discussion we've asked, or question's been asked, who would actually operate that route? It might be RTA, it might be North County Transit District. We're not quite sure. As we work through it and figure it out, that would happen. But the 494, that's entirely inside your guys' service area, and that's in Oceanside to Vista via Mission Avenue. And I think, we've heard this would be a pretty well-serviced and well-ridden route. Low sand is a big part of our plan. Stabilizing the bluffs is one of the top priorities for this. Finishing the double tracking so we can increase the frequencies on the coaster. Replacing bridges, there's still a few that need some replacing. Del Mar section of tracks, that's a touchy topic. I'm not going to get too deep into that one, but that is in our regional plan, and we have a team out there right now working on the environmental work to see exactly what kind of options we have for that. Longer in the plan, in the 2050 phase, is a Miramar tunnel, and that's to straighten out that big loop around the UTC, Miramar, UCSD area, and you would tunnel through that and add a stop at UTC ideally. And speaking of new stops, you guys are already in the works of thinking about a Camp Pendleton stop and the gas lamp one downtown. And then increasing service frequencies on both Coaster, Amtrak, and maybe we talked with Metrolink bringing something else down. So Jennifer quickly mentioned the neighborhood shuttles. We sometimes refer to these as our flexible fleets, but we've been hearing a lot about these. You guys are piloting 2 of these right now. You have plans to pilot a couple more. We have our Flex Fleets pilot program about to come out this summer to provide some more options for other cities or jurisdictions to apply for and try some new routes. But it is a big part of the regional plan. In the North County area, there's 13 service areas. Most of these were developed in conjunction with the work that you guys had done when you identified some of the microtransit areas to do. I think your next one is Fallbrook area. But we also have Oceanside east of the I-5. I know you have the current one in the downtown Oceanside area, but a future one would be that. And then Encinitas and Escondido are also seriously considering ones in the near future. So highway, I know you're a transit district board, but still in the regional plan are a lot of highway projects, working with Caltrans and our board of directors. We hear a lot of what we would like to see. Already in the works right now is to extend the managed lanes on the I-5 up to 76. Right now, like I mentioned, Caltrans is working on the 78 I-15 connector. That's in the works and needs full funding to get all the way through construction. The I-5-78 freeway connector is still, it's a little bit more down the road, but that's still in the plan, and Caltrans will be working closely with the jurisdictions up here to figure out exactly what to do on that one. 78 managed lanes is still in the plan, obviously, and then extending some of the managed lanes from I-15 from Highway 78 up to the northern county line. Again, that one's a little further out in the plan as Caltrans considers that and seeks funding. So, the big thing is we've been doing the public comment period that ends tomorrow. Our transportation committee at Sandag tomorrow morning will be hosting the public hearing, and we hope to get a lot of folks out to provide comments tomorrow. We've already been getting a ton of comments, like Jennifer mentioned. That closes tomorrow night, and then this summer we'll be releasing the draft environmental impact report. Have a public comment period for that as well. The board will then start considering any last final draft to final changes, all from the things we've heard from all these public comments, and then we plan to present that to our board this December for their approval. Again, this is open for a day and a half, but there's still some ways to get in and provide public comments. So for folks listening in and your residents, there's still a chance to get the comments in. You can email, call, use our online form, which is a great way to do it. You just pick the kind of comment you'd like to give, and you can do it straight in there, or come tomorrow to our transportation committee. So with that, I'll hand it back to Mario to wrap it up.
Yeah, thank you. Like we mentioned, this is a 4-year effort that gets updated every 4 years. It gets updated based on the realities that we have at that moment, right? Funding assumptions, new technology. lining up the vision that each of your local agencies have, right? Your land use. So it's ongoing. Projects, you will see projects in a whole list of projects, but this is just the vision of those projects. Each of those projects has to go through its own process, its own environmental document, its own design phase, its own consultation, and its own funding strategy. So these are all assumptions that we're making in this regional plan. And what's really important is that we need to get this plan lined up every 4 years so we can continue to receive formula funds in the region for the local agencies and for the regional agencies like this one. So we really thank you for allowing us to be here presenting this plan, and we're really open to any comments and questions. Thank you.
Right, before we get into questions, just a few items from the NCTD perspective on regional plan input and our priorities. NCTD had discussions with SANDAG staff for this regional plan back in spring and summer of 2023. Generally, there are 3 planning documents that help to inform NCTD's priorities. So that includes the California State Rail Plan, NCTD's Service Implementation Plan, which is updated and approved by the board every year, and NCTD's Microtransit Suitability Analysis, like Brian mentioned. So as a reminder, that suitability analysis was an assessment that planning staff conducted to evaluate and prioritize 14 different zones within NCTD's service area. This assessment has ultimately guided our deployment of NCTD Plus, and we had provided SANDAG with those zones that we evaluated. Generally speaking, NCTD looks for smaller, contained microtransit zones that connect to major transit centers and stations. So you'll see that in the regional plan map. NCTD staff also participated in the North County Regional Plan Learning Session that was held in Vista in June 2025. And we've also had some discussions with SANDAG staff in July 2025 about the draft regional plan. So as you can tell, NCTD expressed to SANDAG that the Sprinter is a high priority for the district, particularly that there is untapped potential on the Sprinter corridor for North County. We also expressed that our priority is projects that improve operations, whether that's projects that decrease travel times or protect service reliability through those infrastructure investments. The NCTD board approves a discretionary grant strategy every year with projects that are consistent with this framework, and you'll see reflected in the regional plan. Grade separation along our rail corridors is also important, as Brian mentioned. And as you know, NCTD has an MOU with the county to explore grade separation at the Buena Creek station, and a similar effort is underway in the city of Vista. NCTD has discussed with SANDAG the prioritized grade separation matrix that Brian mentioned as part of regional planning efforts. And it's important for these projects to be documented in the regional plan as part of our discretionary grant pursuits. Finally, generally, NCTD when staff review the regional plan, we're looking for strategic deployment of our services on key corridors and looking to ensure that any new services connect to NCTD's major transit hubs. Like staff mentioned, the regional plan is a guiding document that is intended to meet those state and federal requirements, and ultimately any service implementation that NCTD intends to operate is included in the service implementation plan, which is updated and approved by the board every year. And then with that, we'll open it for questions.
Thank you very much, Brian and Jennifer and Mario and Katie. That was really informative. Much appreciated. Taylor, do we have any public comments today?
No, we do not, but let the record show Board Member Desmond arrived at 2:21 p.m.
But we're glad you're here. All right. Are there any questions or comments from the board members?
Want
Any
to go first?
comments or questions from any of the board members?
I have questions if nobody else wants to go.
I had a quick one.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you for allowing me to serve as alternate today, and thank you all for joining us from SANDAG. I also have the opportunity to serve as board member on SANDAG, and I'm now looking at how I can support NCTD just for today. So you mentioned that there was, there's plan requirements and there's NCTD has different considerations and in the multiple discussions NCTD has had about the plan, it sounds like we've been, revving up towards this plan, working together for a couple of years to share our concerns. And I heard that there was 3 kind of guiding documents or considerations. That was the sustainability analysis, the California State Rail Plan, and the Service Implementation Plan. My only question would be, are there other guiding documents for this agency that we would want folded in and brought into consideration? And maybe you can inform me of why these are so significant.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for us specifically, our long-range transit plan is included in that. It's not necessarily included in the 3 documents because it's consistently changing. I would say from what Katie mentioned is those conversations are taking place directly between the 2 agencies. So when our long-range transit plan changes or morphs, or when we see opportunities to change things, we talk with the SANDAG team and sort of add those in as needed into the regional plan. The other 3 documents are a little more static. They're state-driven or they're policy requirements in some cases. What we have agency-wide from the long-range transit plan is more a year-over-year look at the service we have, opportunities we may have at a immediate 5 or 10-year lookout. And so when we see those, we go to SANDAG and we have a conversation and we just add those directly into.
So we have the
long-range
opportunity to
plan.
see more of those immediate trends that can influence the plan.
Yeah, and a lot of that conversation is born out of board input as well. So when we get community input on our pieces specifically for NCTD, we get input from the board on what they may want to see in their own cities. We kind of incorporate those in. I will say, having served as the chair of the board on other MPOs, it's difficult to manage all of those into one regional plan when you have 2 transit agencies and then an overarching agency that oversees highways and tolling and a few other things. So the guiding documents that we have listed in there are more specific to state policy. Our long-range plan is very specific to us. And so when we talk about what can be prioritized in the regional plan, we have those conversations very directly with SANDAG.
That's great, thank you. And my only other concern was there was reference to grade separation. And I don't see that incorporated in the draft SANDAG plan at this time, but I think many of us could agree there are some critical corridors where we need grade separation for the purpose of just ease of service, but also for first responders. I know that that is a concern at our Vista Transit Center, so I just want to highlight that.
So we don't specifically call out individual grade separations in the plan. There is a bucket, if you will, or a line item that has a dollar amount that includes, it's a pretty significant dollar amount. And the reason we don't identify specific grade separations is because, as Mario said, each of these projects goes through its own planning and design process. And it's during that process that we would move the project into the regional plan as an identified specific project. Additionally, SANDAG is going through a grade separation analysis to kind of, because there's a lot of different entities that want grade separations in the corridor throughout the region. And so we'll be prioritizing and identifying what are the key criteria that makes a grade separation needed or warranted, and start to lay out that criteria with the assistance of the jurisdictions and the board members.
Very good, thank you.
Board Member Edson?
Thank you, and thank you for coming today. My question is for Sean. Sean, how can SANDAG better support NCTD?
Well, first of all, and I know I've had this conversation with the board before, I really appreciate Mario's leadership. I think it's been at least for me, when I came here, I looked at the relationship that I think this agency had with the previous CEO of SANDAG, and just don't think we really wanted to operate in that environment. And I appreciate the changes that are occurring over at SANDAG. I would say one of the things that we have talked about, so this isn't a secret between the agencies, is I think we have a little bit bigger of a role than I think is maybe identified sometimes in projects when they come across. And so maybe just how we coordinate those things in real time and how we communicate those to the public, I think are critical. The one thing that we have had conversations about, and I did mention it at the TC meeting a few weeks back, I love that there are things in the regional plan like expansion of microtransit and some of these other projects. The one thing I think we occasionally struggle with is we come up with a great identifier for a project and then we push a pilot. And then the pilot, at some point in time we have to decide whether it's not going to be a pilot anymore, we have to find funding for that. And that's been a little bit difficult, I think, for NCTD and for MTS collectively. And I don't necessarily put that on Sandag because that's a revenue generation issue, right? Like either revenues that were generated through the region that would go through Sandag have shown a decline, and we have to decide which one of those projects are most important. But I think that's the biggest piece is where do we find these long-term sustainable fundings for the projects that are identified in the regional plan? And I wouldn't say that's necessarily a Sandag issue. I would just say that sometimes there's a little bit of difficulty when we have a great regional plan that's communicated, and then once it gets transferred to the individual agency level, we have to sort of walk through and decide if long-term sustainably from a financial standpoint we can do that. And so, just really sort of cultivating our message, I think, between the agencies to ensure that, that messaging gets to our customers, right? Because they're the ones that are affected in North County. There's just a lot of big projects that are happening right now. Some of them are a little polarizing, I think. So just how we coordinate that information and how we sort of communicate that in real time, I think is key. But I appreciate Mario's leadership, and I know the team over there consistently brings good information to the table. I've said before on the Bluff relocation project that out of all the mega projects I've been in charge of or been associated with, this one has by far the most information I've ever seen. I know that's been a source of, question. I will say that I see a ton of information come out of that project. May not be information that you agree with. It may not be information that you want to see, but it is a great deal of information that has been really cultivated over the past decade. So, there's always room for improvement. I think as an agency, we have room for improvement, and, our relationship will continue to evolve as we move forward in this thing. But I definitely want to make sure that we give a nod to the noticeable changes that we see at Sandag, and I think that's a direct result of Mario's leadership.
Well, if I may, Chair, just current chair.
For the day.
Chair for the day, like queen for the day. Just one comment. I really, as both a board member of Sandag and NCTD, I really appreciate the work that both agencies do. And I share Sean's initial comment about frustration over pilot programs like YOP and flexible fleets that are successful, yet there's no sustainable sources of funding. So, whatever we can do to make that happen is good, but we can't steal money from the transit agencies on other programs to support these programs. There's still got to be operations funds. So it's tough.
Board Member Desmond.
Well, thank you. Sorry I was late. But I have a couple questions, and thank you to the Sandag staff and Mario, for the CEO coming up here, and appreciate that. And I'm glad to hear. I know we are a transit agency, but we're the transportation agency as well, and so I like to see the balance where you've got projects like the 7815, the 785, coming onto line, or hopefully advancing those projects. And then hearing about you did mention one grade separation, Buena Creek. Somebody did. Who said, oh, you did? Okay, great. All right, sorry. So we did. All right, the Buena Creek. But that one, I'll just say, for the county, that's very important that whole area works. Because I've heard complaints, and I'm sure Katie's heard the same things, from the fire and first responders response. It's just a kind of a mess there, and it's a county's area. So I've actually, for several years now, we've been putting an effort into realigning some of those roads and getting some of those plans in ahead of time. So I was glad to hear that. So I do have three questions though. So, and it's been a while since I was on Sandag, but is this the time, or are there any defined early action projects yet, or no, in putting out the transportation plan, the regional I guess it's a draft, but I'm just wondering if they're in there or not.
That's a great question. And
Let's have a great answer.
the regional plan, it's that snapshot to get us to the targets for air emissions and the different requirements we have. Now, the early action plan, maybe that you're referring to, was the Transnet 2 ordinance, early action items. And we're going to be having a priority discussion with the board of directors, where there's a time of reckoning, where we need to have a discussion about the regional plan, the Transnet commitments, and having that discussion of what has been achieved and what needs to be achieved. And having also, not just with the early action plans, but other projects that North County Transit, the county, any of the cities bring up and say, this is something that I really want you all to focus on and work with my entity to move it ahead. From a funding perspective, from a delivery perspective. Each project of itself stands alone, right? This is just a snapshot, and it gives windows of delivery. So we will be having a discussion about priorities, because the needs and the priorities are here and the funding is here. And we're staff, we're going to put everything in front on the policymakers, which is our board members, and we're going to ask, what are the priorities? But it needs to be based on the different agencies brings up also as what's the priority. So North County is going to be telling us, we're interested in seeing this early on. And we're going to have that discussion with the board of directors.
Okay, well, I guess I could assume, though, I guess if you've got timelines, the timelines you've got set, that's an indication of where projects might fall in the order of, or sequence, I guess.
Yeah, and if I could take a step back, and probably should have brought this up during the presentation, the plan is laid out in two, or actually three increments, if you will. 2035.
You probably said this before I got here, but go ahead.
No, you were here. You were here. I just didn't say it. So 2035, and those are the projects we can reasonably expect to deliver by 2035. They don't all show up on 2035. There's staggered timeframes between 2025 and 2035. And then there's a timeframe between 2035 and 2050 where you'll see a whole nother group of projects that get delivered. And then we have the third section of the regional plan called the unconstrained project. Those have no delivery date. They're kind of a, I hate to say wish list, but they are a documentation of what the region would like to accomplish, but isn't able to do within those two other timeframes. So if you're interested in what is going to occur in the near term, look at the 2035 plan.
Okay, appreciate it. And I'm glad to hear that you brought up, Transnet, and even though that's in the past, those promises were still, some of us still hang on to those and say, hey, where the heck are they? So I appreciate that. And then I did have a question on, I got two more. The Temecula-San Marcos via Escondido, sounds a little, we're reaching out to Temecula now? Have we done that before? Is that new? Is that?
It's not new.
We bring them into North County? Are they like Greenland? We're bringing them in? I don't know.
There was a run once upon a time that was actually operated by the transit system in Temecula. We do see an opportunity there. I know that CSUSM has talked to us about students that are also in that area. I would say the agency doesn't necessarily have an issue with the thought process behind that route. I would say our only concern in real time is that we're already facing some potential challenges on funding our current service. And so adding in some of those things would require us to have a conversation that's a little bigger about where that directed funding would come from. And the best example of that would be, MTS has made some decisions over the years to pull out of, Sorrento Valley. We've covered some of that service. We've had a lot of conversations about MTS, the service between, Eastside Downtown and Escondido Transit Center. what does that look like in the future? How does that roll into the plan? Right now, that's rapid route for them. Does that just extend all the way to Temecula? I think, we see that as our service area. We would like to try to target that market if there was funding available, but we have an obligation to our current routing structure first, and then whatever that next piece would be.
Okay, well, and I'm fine with it. I just, because I realize a lot of students come down from Riverside County, Temecula area, Murrieta, coming to San Marcos or even Palomar College. Although there's a smaller Palomar College campus at the 15 and 76, I guess it is. So that's, all right, so you didn't want to bring it up, but I will. Delmar, and I don't want to take away from the chair's position on this, but the NCTD, the rail lines are hopefully, I mean, that's our rail line, right?
We own the rail line.
We own the rail line. So as far as, and I know there's a lot of discussions on picking which line, which lane, and the yellow, the blue, the purple, the green, whatever they are. And I understand you're doing boring right now. And I guess, so what's the next steps in that process for where the tracks are going to land to get them off the bluffs eventually at NCTD? Just, you don't have to tell me which one yet, but what's the next steps?
Well, any project has multiple phases, right? That's one, check the box, it's in the regional plan, right? So it's there. But like I mentioned, they become a standalone project and we need to pursue the funding. Every project has their environmental document phase, their design phase, and their construction phase. We are at the environmental document phase, and we're looking at multiple alternatives. It's fully funded, and we're working with the different stakeholders in the area. We are very cognizant that this is North County Transit. There's an MOU where North County Transit has final say on the designs and what gets built there also.
We do?
So-
We have final say on that? Not Sandag Board?
Yeah, I would
At
say
the
that.
design.
At the design?
Yeah, I would say once the design has been, once the path forward has been chosen by the Sandag Board, this board has the opportunity to make the decision whether or not that is something that needs to be done on our rail.
Okay, but once they come up, okay, so the design, they do the design, come up with a suggestion, and then we get yay or nay, or up or down vote on it? Is that right?
I would say we have, it's our railroad. We own the line. We would have to decide whether or not we're comfortable with the action taken, who will own that railroad, how those funding sources will be decided, and if we're comfortable with that course of action.
And that's not a point of decision, it's a journey, right? So we are in the environmental document and we're talking.
Yeah, I know that's not
And
coming,
if
okay.
North County Transit tells us this is something that we're not comfortable with, why even go there? Or if Coastal Commission tells us this is something I'm not going to approve, then that alternative becomes unfeasible. So this is why the environmental document phase exists. You look at everything, you look at all the different components physically, the impacts to the environment, the public's interest. It takes everything into consideration.
Okay, well, and I appreciate you Sandag doing all that work on for this effort here. I've looked at the different lines and things like that, and to me, the north yellow line looks the least disruptive. I don't know if it's the least most cost effective or not, but it looks like the least disruptive. I haven't talked to Solana Beach yet or anybody else, but to me, that would be probably preferable, in my opinion, just my opinion on for that effort. But I appreciate all the hard work, and I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Board Member Joyce, none?
Yeah. Thank you again for being here today. I just wanted to flag a few things. It's been brought up about the pilot projects, and looking at the lovely brochure, we even have the little Ghost Cider is featured in the neighborhood electric vehicle show of the plan itself. So, there's been funding for it to pilot. It's extremely popular. It definitely keeps emissions down in our downtown area where people are buzzing around all year. It also has been really critical for getting some of our at-risk neighborhoods to the grocery store on a daily basis. We have really great relationships. So just a plug to to find ways to extend projects like that beyond the pilot zone. Also, I actually had a question about the 494, the Oside to Vista rapid route. Is there any information about what that will look like or could look like, or is it just like we identify that as a really good route to make
Yeah,
rapid?
there's a line on the map in the plan, but like the work we're doing on the Temecula route down, we have the planning funding to do some alternative analysis work on that. Now we're actually going to get into the details for that route of where we might stop. We're talking to the residents in San Marcos, Escondido, Fallbrook,
Okay.
Temecula, like where should we stop? What are you thinking about? And then we'll start providing alternatives. So now we're actually getting into the fun stuff of this and getting it. So the same would be with the 494, like where would we actually stop? Should we actually extend it south of Oceanside a little bit, go further east? All those will be considered and most likely be changed from what you see in that plan right now.
But there, we need to be, very, transparent. These are concepts that we're developing with ideas to achieve the reduction of air emissions. But the conversation of the sustainability of these programs, it's something that's there, right? And we need to take at Sandac always the concerns and the comments of the owner operators. It is a balancing act, right? So sometimes there's something that's good there, but it may not be achievable from financial sustainability purposes tomorrow. It may be achievable later on. That's why the windows in the regional plan give such a broad amount, right?
Yeah, I would say too, one thing that we have an opportunity, I think, to, I don't want to say course correct's not the right thing, but I think maybe be more informative to the public is, I think there's been one very static view of what a rapid route looks like. And really, bus rapid transit is a million different things. It's a combination of, could just be dedicated guideway. It could be a combination of not dedicated guideway and dedicated guideway. It could be no dedicated guideway whatsoever with stops that have amenities and transit signal priority and reducing stops along the line to speed up the process through the way. So there's a ton of different ways that you can look at a rapid route. And depending on what city you're in and the layout of the geography, it could be different in each part of the city, depending on what that city wants out of that transaction. I think historically, there's just been a thought that we're going to come in and take a lane of your road and good luck. And that's not what the process is. The process is very thoughtful about who's impacted within a half mile, what routes are adjacent that's on a 1 hour service, that if it was on a 15 or 10-minute headway, would have a game-changing impact to a neighborhood that might walk a half mile instead of waiting in front of their house for a 1 hour bus. There's all these pieces that kind of go into it that I just think we haven't reached that point yet with our planning team and with Sandag to have those sort of iteration conversations. And so, there's more to be done on that level.
Great. Okay. Now to the somewhat non-NCTD related. The 76 is really, really bad. And so my constituents constantly ask, like, what is going to be done to make it a usable roadway? So I'm just going to flag that. I noticed it doesn't have a lot of breathing room in the regional plan. And then just also to flag the 5, getting the managed lanes up until the 76 itself. And we already have some issues with the Camp Pendleton 5 interchange that we're meeting with constituents about right now. But they have, the traffic will get backed up going into Camp Pendleton all the way to the freeway, and then really in unsafe conditions, like on the freeway. So just being thoughtful about those plans and making sure they're including the most needed areas.
I would say specifically on the I-5, the HOB from 78 to Oceanside, that project is, I would say, beyond the regional plan. It's in implementation. It's being designed as we're speaking, and the next strategy is, and it's going to be part of the priority discussion, how do we fund the construction so we can begin construction within the next 2 to 3 years. That's about $140 million investment just on the construction. But if you put it in a priority phase, that's almost ready to, it's shovel ready within a year and a half to 2 years from now. So we really need to be cognizant that that has to be funded, because if not, we're going to lose the value of doing the design.
Okay. All right, thank you so much.
Board Member Garcia?
Wonderful. Thank you for the presentation. Nice to see you all here. Just a couple of things I want to speak to. I want to thank you for the renewed interest of response to stakeholders and the community's input. So thank you very much for taking that. I begin to hear from even my constituents talking about how they feel that they actually have a voice that they didn't have before. So just to highlight that, thank you very much. Shade frequency and security. That's awesome. That's great. I love the way it just flows very easily. Security, both for Sandag, for at least for us here at NCTD, I'll speak to that. We're doing very well. Hear from the constituents how it's all improving. Frequency, not so much. We're all working on that, and I know that will always be a concern and something. So I'd like to highlight that and connection with that. Now, shade. When I was first elected 5 years ago, that was an issue that I got from my constituents about just talking not macro, micro. In Escondido, a couple of stops that really needed full of senior citizens, et cetera, et cetera. It rains and it gets very hot. So promptly sent an email out, and I got a response, and it was, we're gonna do this, and it's gonna take 5 years, because it's gonna, this year, number one, this year, number two, this year, number three, this year, so I'm in year 4, and I haven't said anything, and I'm waiting to see if in year 5, that goes up. Now, I begin to hear across the region that there are areas that probably should have a little more priority for something so simple like that, because if we're trying to increase in the regional plan, including this, not only the not only the driving and the VMTs and all of that, but also the actual increase actual transportation of the usage of our public. If it's raining, I'm gonna write something. If it's really hot, I'm gonna do something else. And we just kind of shoot ourselves in the foot if we're not able to provide. So I wanted to highlight that when it comes to something that could be so unimportant, maybe it seems, in the scheme of everything, but extremely important to those that ride our public transportation. So those were just a couple of comments that I wanted to make. But once again, thank you for your responsiveness, and thank you for the renewed interest to listen to the stakeholders and to our residents and those that ride our public transportation. Thank you.
That was a fantastic point. It really was. We were all nodding, full agreement. First off, I wanted to thank you for coming today. I appreciated how you were able to put a presentation together that was succinct about such a massive organization that so many people have such a hard time putting their mind around. So thank you. It was fantastic. I also want to compliment you, Mario. I know under Mayor Huebner and your support or your leadership at Sandag, I know our mayor, Bruce Ehlers, has had nothing but high level comments about the efforts being done there. So thank you for that, and appreciate you coming out today. So moving to some questions I have, and I think we've touched on this. I heard Sean talk about it. I believe Mr. Desmond talked about it. Councilmember Joyce talked, or Councilmember Joyce talked about it. We talked about frequency, and we've all talked about touching on frequency. And you mentioned 15 rapid bus routes, neighborhood shuttles. And we talked about, you mentioned who operates, and I appreciate that. I don't hear a real push about funding. And what I see us doing each week or each month here is cutting routes, minimizing options for our people. And I think this idea of frequency is, you're spot on. But how do we do it? And where do we get the funds? And who are we pushing forward to do it? And if it's going to be us doing it frequency, we're going to have to cut services and cut routes. And I'm wondering what is the strategy? Is the strategy to help us find funds, or is it to require us to remove or change routes, which I know Vista is not here, but Vista is very straddled by the challenge of getting its residents around. And so I'm just wondering what the strategy is there, other than just to increase frequency, because it's a great dream. I don't see it from where I'm sitting, so I'm wondering what your thought is on that.
Well, our regional plan, which is what we're presenting, it's the snapshot of what we think things there that are going to happen. Now, you're asking probably what's our financial strategies beyond the assumptions that we make in the regional plan. The regional plan has multiple assumptions of what future revenues could look like or not look like, and they're spelled out there. But I would say from a today perspective, it's a partnership where we're talking. When I'm in Sacramento, I'm calling Sean and asking him, what do you need? Let me know. I'm meeting with such and such person, saying when I'm in Washington. We also should not always expect just formula funds. We need to figure out how we're going to cut our cost from a capital perspective. I'm talking how some of the existing revenues could be shifted from either capital to operations. And part of the discussion the SANDAG board is going to have about those priorities is not just about projects, but programs. So it's you're asking a great question, and I don't think anybody has the exact answer to it. I think it's the village that needs to come together to get to trying to figure out how we optimize the system, how we bring in more resources for the system, and how we are able to get to the point of that vision of where we need to hit the targets, either for air emissions or something else. Or do the targets need to be reduced, right? Have we been put in at too much of a high mark, and that all the money that we're spending should be to get to that point that maybe it's not achievable, can be reinvested into services that really help us reduce emissions. I'm not giving you a straight answer, but I think I would say it's a matter of looking jointly at policy, looking at potential revenue sources, looking at optimizing our services, and looking at new technology. I'll just give you one simple example. The managed lane systems, it's the HOVs being converted into managed lanes, having more riders, that people with more occupancy ride it free, and then selling that capacity. But that capacity is not for an agency profit. If you end up doing that, it's for the transit agencies to be subsidized. Is that a strategy that's going to be implemented? We're not the policymakers, but that's one tool, one of the tools in the toolboxes. And there's so many. So I think it's having that joint discussion and the what's possible and what's really stretching it that it's not feasible. So that's what I can tell you. We're really working very closely, and each time we're trying to enhance that partnership so we have a joint vision.
Well, it's great. I appreciate that, and I hear the dedication to partnership and collaboration. And I'm really glad to hear that. I hope I'm not hearing that you're going to charge me to pay extra to drive on a road I've already paid for, but we won't talk about that today. I'm intrigued, up on there, something we talk about at every NCCE meeting that I've been to recently is school connections, and it seemed to come by the board really quickly up there. I'd love to hear more about that if you could. I know that's something where a lot of us are dedicated to in our communities.
Yeah, so we have also heard a lot about school connections and the importance of school connections. Unfortunately, everybody is financially strapped, and, the state school system has really taken a step back from providing school service, direct school bus service. And so as part of our analysis early in the plan, we look at what are major trip generators, and those include educational facilities. We mostly look at middle schools and high schools because we recognize that elementary school age kids generally aren't taking transit to get to their destination or to their schools. So we do look at how we can route services, or if there's a way that the rapid service can provide a connection. We also work with our local operators to see, if the additional frequency could help. The flexible fleet service also, the microtransit, we see that as a real benefit to school kids getting to and from school, because that's a safe system that can get them directly to and from school. It's very difficult because we generally can't provide point-to-point school service. We don't have the funding to do that for the school system. So we look at how we can optimize our existing transit service to really serve the high schools and the middle schools, the highest density population middle and high schools.
And are we working that through the school systems, education department, the local agencies? How are we, which agencies are we working, like in Encinitas, for example, with EUSD or San Diego School District? Are we working with the California educational system as a whole?
Let me go back a little bit what SANDAC does. SANDAC is looking at the capital projects and what needs to get to the targets that we have. The operators are the ones who design the specifics of that service. So it's a partnership of working together and seeing what the operator needs, also with what the regional vision has to get to the targets. So it's a matter of talking here, North County Transit, having that dialogue with the school districts, and also how we can cooperate with that longer term vision of creating routes or how we can help with some capital projects. I remember in one location in San Diego County, I was still not at SANDAC, it was when I was in Caltrans, we got a call from MTS. And there's this high school that was had a stop just near the freeway, and suddenly we were getting, each bus was bringing 40 to 50 kids at each of their runs, and the bus stop couldn't take it, and it didn't have shelters. It was in an on and off ramp, and it was a safety concern. So there, what we worked on was, again, in a collaboration with SANDAC, MTS, and Caltrans, and we figure out how to enhance the stop, how to make it safer, and really understanding that there was an unprecedented demand because the school bus had been cut in that area. So those are one-offs, but it requires, each case is a situation of itself, and it's that collaboration.
That's great. I appreciate the clarification. It's really, really helpful. And a couple more questions. Regarding SB 375, I know with our CAP plan in our own city, for example, one of the challenges we have is with the socioeconomical challenge, the structural challenges. We're constantly having to go back and realign it because we can't expect our residents to have $50,000 to upgrade their car, put in a charger, change where they live. Just the challenges of it that everybody faces. And I'm wondering how often that's having to be updated, or how we're dealing with that across the board as a region, that challenge of SB 375 and the socioeconomic and the structural impacts we have, or the hurdles we have to accomplish to achieve it.
You asked very good questions.
Thank
And,
you.
SB 375 was passed around 18 years ago. And it has a lot of merit, right? It wants to help reduce greenhouse emissions. I think SB 375 needs to be relooked at. And the world is different today than it was 18, 20 years ago. We have a lot of new technological advancements. What I can tell you as a region, and Sandak is taking that lead, we have met with the other 4 MPOs, bigger MPOs in California, and we have agreed to pursue a discussion and movement of evaluating SB 375, acknowledging its merits, but also acknowledging and bringing to the administration the point that there is time to relook at it and see what has worked and what hasn't worked, and where we need to retool it. And we'll probably in the future, probably not that near future, because those are long journeys, we'll coordinate with your management, but we'll come and present where we are with those efforts. That's a journey. It's not a short-term endeavor, but definitely it has to be acknowledged that SB 375 is a good thing, it's achieved good things, but it also, some things probably need to be retweaked.
Thank you. I appreciate you answering the questions. I really do. Obviously, these are all questions I'm asking because I'm passionate to get the best outcomes for our residents, and I appreciate your same interest and willingness to answer these questions. I appreciate your time today as well. And my last comment, and this isn't really a question, is I would love to see Sandag regionally talk a little bit more about e-bike safety. It is something that we experience literally at every council meeting we have in Encinitas. I assume some of my other counterparts up here experience the challenge of e-bike safety on a regular basis. And with transportation being a huge issue in San Diego, and question of, we won't get into development questions, but getting people to tighter from getting that last mile, using public transportation, whatever it is, e-bike usage is going up. Our youth are using it, our adults are using it, and the better we can do as a region at the big level, kind of start big, work small, across the board to promote safety and policy that is encouraging everybody to use it, but to use it and get there in one piece. I'd love to see Sandag take part in that effort with everybody. So that's my last thing. I don't have any more questions, I promise. I really appreciate your time. I appreciate you hearing me out. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll be very brief. I'm part of the Regional Planning Subcommittee on Sandag, so I've heard this before, and I appreciate you being here. I, too, want to get credit for asking a good question, because I had SB 375. I think he stole that from me because I circled it, so I'm not so sure about that. So just from an educational standpoint, I thought it started like in 2008 or 9 that was passed, but with the goal of 19% reduction, where are we as a state? Do you have any idea? Because I've never
as a
gotten that
state?
answer. Yeah. I mean, I'm sorry, as a region.
As a region.
19.3%. So, and that,
So the plan achieves what we're being asked for. But that is, the plan itself, let's land this plan into a little bit of more reality. The prior plan was how big?
$160 billion.
$160 billion. This plan is $130 billion. So we're scaling it down based on the realities. It still has a lot of assumptions there, right? But it's what we think that it's achievable, but it's still a very high mark. But our responsibility is to provide, to the best of our knowledge, a plan that, if the assumptions are achieved, can be achieved itself. And it can allow your city, the other cities, the county, the transit agencies, and the region to still receive funding from the state and the federal government. Now, there's going to be a point of reckoning where there's going to say, okay, there's going to be a point that we are going to say it may not be achievable based on limitations of funding. All this cannot be achieved. Maybe we can do the capital project, but then our partners, the transit agents, cannot operate it. So that's why talking about SB 375 targets now and putting in those target emissions to a more realistic point of view, it's important, as well as talking about maybe vehicles miles travel is not the right proxy for greenhouse emissions, right? Why? Well, you have a lot of e-cars now, a lot of e-bikes, but that's not getting credit. The electric vehicles still driving miles, and we're still getting penalized or measured with that one, even so the emissions are down. So those are the discussions that we all need to have. Right now, this plan achieves that, and it allows the region to continue receiving funding.
Thank you. And then my other two comments are, I'm glad to see microtransit in the plan. Although, the funding is really important, I think it's a great way to enhance public transportation because it's that last connection for people. We've had people today share that it's a safety issue that allowed her now to enjoy taking public transportation. So I think, and it's an equity issue. And so I think that microtransit's really important. And then I also agree with Board Member O'Hara is that anything we can do in the plan to enhance bike safety and bike routes are really important. And I shared a lot of that with one of your employees at the regional planning meeting. I think that's very important.
I'm going to close with this, and you're going to think, oh my God, Mario is so philosophical here. But look, we in government sometimes aren't nimble enough to catch up with an evolving world and technology. And that's the challenge that we have sometimes, among many other challenges. So e-bikes, understanding, creating the appropriate design features or metrics, right? Who does it? We still don't know, right? But that strategies of how to move people. We're on the 21st century. We have to be thinking 21st century and not 20th century strategies. So those are things that sometimes it takes us some time to catch up, but we hear you. There are a lot of things that we need to get there. You as an agency are pursuing alternate fuel equipment. That is great, right? That is moving into the future. So all those different things, it's putting it in the blender and making it work.
Yeah. All right, so this is an informational item, so there's no, oops.
I'm
yes.
sorry, I had one more clarifying question. I appreciate this discussion, I really do. And this might be a question for Sean, a little bit more clarity on the grade separations. So I think it's great that we have a couple of jurisdictions within the NCTD service territory that have, put some resources towards grade separation. We've done that in the city of Vista. It sounds like the county is doing that as well. And my concern is that although it sounds like there's going to be funding in the 2025 plan, there doesn't seem to be a commitment from Sandag to look at these particular projects specifically. So I just wanted to understand what will NCTD be doing in order to go after these competitive funds?
Yeah, I would say some of them are grant related. In fact, on Buena Creek, we teamed up with Desmond's office to seek grants for that. We were not successful. So, between the supervisor's office and between NCTD, every year we aggressively work on these grant plans because that's really the first part of the process to find out what needs to be done, how much that's really going to cost, and then slide it into Sandag's queue. There's two of them specifically in that corner. We have some all over the coaster and spinner lines, but specifically for us, Vista Village and Buena Creek. Both are probably equal in terms of the need for grade separation. Buena Creek probably has a little more significant challenge than Vista Village does, just in terms of the length of really the necessary grade separation itself. Our goal is to continue to look into those, and we're aggressively looking for either state funding grants or federal grants to be able to really kickstart the process, so that once we have those completed, we can jump them in the queue. And then we'll have that conversation collectively about which ones regionally have the priority to begin to work on them. And we do have several along the coastal line as well, between Carlsbad and Encinitas and a few other locations. I mean, there's just some locations all the way throughout the system that would probably, from a safety standpoint, be better served. And we have quite a few meetings about that with city staff. I know we've had conversations with Vista County staff about that. We've met with Encinitas and Carlsbad about the same things. So I would say, to answer your question, a lot of it comes down to how aggressive they are in giving us the grant funding to explore what is needed in that arena. I was a little disappointed that the joint grant request that we had between the supervisor's office and our office did not get picked up. I thought for sure that was a win. I know our team worked very well with the supervisor's staff to put a really good path forward on that. We're gonna go forward again this year. We're gonna see if we can snag it. Those are high priority areas for us. I mean, they all are. I would say things that have been on our radar, specifically in the Sprinter Corridor, our Vista Village and Buena Creek. So we're going to aggressively try to solve those problems.
Thanks. I completely agree. Both of those intersections are significant. Even my parents live over in the Buena Creek area, and so safety response, is super high priority to me. But it's hard when we're competing with the entire region, and we've identified as an agency that these are our top priorities, right? So we want to make sure that that is heard. And then I also, just as a last comment, absolutely agree with Member Garcia. If we can, and maybe this goes back to Member Desmond's comments as well, what are the first projects that we can get done as, as a SANDAG board and as a SANDAG staff? How can we just raise the quality of life for people so that they're actually moving into these facilities with dignity, with shade, with safety, and a little bit more ease? So I completely agree with those comments. Thanks.
Well, I have some good news on that front. Through THUD, most recently, there were some awards put out that do cover some of those between Escondido and San Marcos. So right now, it's just a matter of figuring out how we're going to manage those locations. Unfortunately, we're still going through a NEPA process on some of those, so it does take a little longer than it historically did. But the good news is that those things are moving along as we thought they would be planned. Although we still have one more year to go.
Well, thank you again for being here, and Mario, thank you for your leadership. Okay, then the next and last item on the agenda is informational and is related to an update on the insourcing of bus operations. Just a few weeks ago, NCTD brought bus operations and maintenance in-house and gained approximately 450 employees as a result. NCTD staff will provide a presentation on this transition. So who's presenting?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, for today, and members of the board. This was a huge, really a huge undertaking for the organization. In my career, I've been a part of a few transitions over the course of either outsourcing or insourcing and kind of going in between. And it really takes a lot of energy. And the reality is if you plan them out for 3 years, it's really the last 2 months where everything sort of comes together and really makes it kind of happen. And that's just sort of the way it goes. We really kind of started this endeavor, the board may or may not remember, it came to the board back in 2022. We had agreed that we were going to look to try to outsource by late 2027. When I came on board the agency, one of my main goals was we had just brought rail in-house, and there really was an opportunity for us to bring all of our employees under sort of one direct operation. I mean, largely our organization had been a facilitation organization to manage outsourced rail and outsourced bus. We have really transformed into an operator. And I think that's important for the world-class service that we want to give to our communities. Really managing between the two, when you have 3 different organizations that are sort of managing in real time what operations looks like, you really want to consolidate that stream of information sharing, organizational throughput, and really responsibility to the downline customer under one agency. And so that's kind of what we did here. I want to take a minute to recognize Nick Solfel, who's out here in the crowd today. When I first came on board, one of the first things I did was ask Nick to come up to my office, and dropped on him that he was going to be in charge of the transition. So Nick is still here. So we got Nick and I both lost a lot of hair during the transition, so so it is what it is. This is a really great picture of sort of through the transition and how we were giving our employees, information about the organization and new badges and all the things that are kind of required. And we'll kind of talk about it in a minute, but really you're talking about doubling the size of the organization. I mean, we had roughly 500 employees that worked here, a little less than that in our previous iteration. This added a little over 450 additional employees to the organization, so we essentially doubled in size overnight, and that's a huge deal. I really kind of want to take a minute when we walk through some of these numbers, and I want to give out a bunch of kudos here for a second, but really 55-plus purchase agreements in our procurement department to bring in some of those things, 450-plus new employees. It required our teams to manage 5 different labor MOU extensions, so we got temporary extensions with our bargaining units on 5 of those labor agreements so that we can negotiate them while they're in-house. And really 3 new system implementations from maintenance of operations, operations on the street, and then some stuff we had in the back office. So the reality is all of this sort of happened in about 8 months. And so that's a huge deal. I can tell you that, that doesn't happen if you don't have a good relationship with the operator that has the contract that you're taking it from. And so I do want to make sure that we give kudos where kudos are due. The transition, for all intents and purposes, went very smoothly because we had a good relationship with the operator who had the employees before. And the reality is this was really an effort to bring all of our modes in-house under one roof. It really wasn't necessarily anything about bus operations or rail operations, so we're just thankful for that. Every department that we had really had a touch point in this transition. And, from our operations team to our admin group, our human resources department, our procurement team, IT, payroll for sure, they did a phenomenal job. Our unions with the Teamsters and the ATU, our legal teams. I mean, there was every single department in this organization had a touch point in this thing. And realistically, probably the last 4 weeks for a lot of our employees have been 7 days a week, significant hours of the day, really just to make sure that that transition is there. And you know what? Like with every transition, we got a couple bumps in the road. It's not that big of a deal. We're going to work through them with our employees. Everybody got paid last Friday, and that was really the first test of whether or not this was a success. And so I know everybody was pretty excited about that. But I really couldn't be more proud of the work that every single one of our departments put forward. I mean, whenever you're talking about onboarding 450 employees, like that is just a Herculean task. And so, our IT team to get emails for everybody and for HR to get the paperwork into the system and get that over to operations so that they could pass out badges and make sure that the system was still running on a daily basis, to our maintenance teams who essentially acquired all of the maintenance equipment and all of the items that were in the maintenance house into our house to be able to work on our equipment. And it was just seamless. Like we switched over from Saturday to a Sunday and operations just kept running. And I think that's such a testament to the amazing work that our employees really put forth every day. It's kind of the things you don't see behind the scenes. And I just, I've been through a few of these in my career, and I really couldn't be more proud of the work that all the teams put forth. I mean, it's been busy, it's been heavy. We got I think everybody's ready for a vacation, but it's been good. Some of the complementary initiatives that we kind of have around that and that will springboard off of this that we continue to do, we've been doing, we're going to keep doing into the future, our clean air initiatives. And we just received we're receiving our last piece of the last bus order that we had on our hydrogen fuel cell buses. Our hydrogen fuel cell facility is still under construction, but it should be done hopefully sometime this fall, and we'll invite everybody back out to take a look at that. NCTD Plus expansion, we were just in Vista a couple months ago. What a great launch that was. We're starting to see all of the demand that we wanted from that route. We're making tweaks here and there, thanks to Katie's group in planning and the feedback that we're getting from that to make the necessary adjustments. We just had our folks compete at the National Bus Rodeo. This fall, we're going to host the regional rodeo between MTS and our folks here at NCTD. So we'll invite all the board to that if you want to come out and drive a bus in our lot, if that's ever something you've wanted to do. And, we'll we'll make sure you don't take it out on the street, but we'll make it work. The rodeo is pretty cool. It's an opportunity, I think we've talked about it before. It's really a showcase by our employees to really put their skills out there. If you've never seen a rodeo, you should come check it out. It can be nerve-wracking. I've driven that course myself a few times. It's a lot. It can be a lot. I've had my CDL for over 20 years now, and every time that I go to a rodeo, I start to sweat a little bit. And it's a lot, right? I'm just waiting for the operators to let me know that maybe I need some work. Upcoming initiatives in FY26, we're still working through a few facility upgrades that were approved in the 26 CIP. Shelters, as mentioned before, but really here on our property, there has not been the effort that I think we need to put into making sure that our facilities are good for the next 30 or 50 years of our life. I mean, we're coming up on our 50th anniversary. We need to have equipment, and we need to have buildings that are in the best shape they can be for our employees for the next 50 years. We've got some pretty decent locations throughout the county where we're stationed, so we just need to make sure that those are moving forward. Workforce development, especially on zero-emission vehicle and tech programs. We actually have an employee here who teaches at Palomar. We have an apprenticeship with Palomar College, but we also have someone who teaches at Miramar. And that's pretty cool. Lilia Montoya, our Chief Operating Officer, and I were able to go to a class that was put on and actually talk about the benefits of NCTD. And like when you get done with school, come out and see us and work here. So it's really nice to be able to kind of have those touch points out in the community. And then really to optimize operations, we continue to refine, all of our operations, systems, procedures, and services. I know we've said this a million times, but we're unique. We have sort of a hybrid rail system, we have a commuter rail system, and we have a bus system. Those are things you usually find in a large system. We're a mid-sized system that has all three of those. And really the best opportunity for us was to bring all those back in-house so that we have the ultimate touch point for every one of our customers. And so, again, it was a lot going on, really supporting our mission of renewed and reinvested in our culture of service and really providing that accountability, integrity, and teamwork that I think our customers expect from us. And, again, I just want to go back and say it was a lot. There were some tough meetings. There were some conversations behind the scenes about things we needed to kind of change on the fly, but everybody responded. And I can't tell you how big of a deal that is as a leader to kind of watch that happen in real time. It means that no matter what happens at the end of the day, we've got the right people at the organization and we're moving forward in the right space. And I would offer anybody who was involved in that operation, please stand up. Alex didn't stand up, but Alex was part of that. And that's really all I had today on the transition. We've had a few board members that came out if and when they were able to. When we had a couple of days after we opened up, we brought out some food trucks for the folks and just said thanks and appreciate all the work that's happening. And I can tell you that our employees very much appreciate the support that they get from this board. It's mentioned every time that we are out at the facilities. I know that from our bus operators and from our bus operations team, they know that those things aren't possible without the support of the board of the directors. And so they, wanted me to relay their thanks to you for that. So appreciate the hard work that was put in. And that's all I have on this, unless anybody has any questions for me.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments from the board?
I just wanted to comment. Our city hall is right above our transit center and NCS. And I had a break where I was meeting the sheriff at the transit center, walked down there and got there early. I had a chance to talk to some of our drivers. And I talked about just this past week with how's the transition going. And my feedback was that employee morale is at an all-time high as a result of this. So kudos and compliments to your staff.
I just wanted to say congratulations. I know this has been a long time coming, and I know that it was a lot of work for everyone, so thank you all.
it's kind of crazy in this time because it feels like all the wind is moving to contracting and to, everybody getting pushed out of a collective space. So I just think it's cool to be going the other direction and to feel closer to our family. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and I just want to congratulate you. I think, you talk about how all the employees were all in, but I'm sure it's under your leadership. It's a big part of that. So thank you for that. And I'm really happy they're part of the team. I'm sure they really feel part of the team now, which is really important for morale and for service and everything. So all good news. Okay, do we have any public comment?
No, we do not.
Okay, I went out of order, so sorry about that. All right, so this was just informational, so we no vote on that. Do you have anything to add today?
Just a couple things. I'll make it quick because I know we had a great presentation from Sandag. Didn't want to take a minute to thank Sandag. I know they left, and I've said it a couple times. Like, I really appreciate Mario's leadership. We've had a lot of tough conversations about things that impact our agencies in the region. One of the things that I know we do transit here, but one of the things I'm on him about consistently is 78. So, looking forward to those managed lanes on 78 so we can put our buses on them. Transit funding as a whole, I think there were some general fears across the nation about what the current budget might look like. I think we were probably not surprised, but thankful that the president's budget that just came out actually added some money to public transportation. There's also some money that's being put in there in the CIP part for strengthening some of the transit stations that we have and a few other things. That's been a source for a long time of transit systems that were built, transit centers that were built in the 70s and 80s are in need of some desperate repair. And so we were glad to see that reinvestment, I think, in infrastructure, which was a follow-up on the previous administration. So I was glad to see that continue. We've got Comic-Con in Del Mar races coming up. Make sure you go, spend your money. If I had to choose between the two, I'd say spend more money in Del Mar, but we support both. We support both. If you're not 21 and you can't bet on the ponies, go to Comic-Con. I would say ridership on Padres in the last run we had with the fair was pretty phenomenal. We had a lot of great feedback on our coaster service, and I want to give kudos to Mary and her team. The marketing team did a fantastic job of really building that up. And I want to give kudos to the rail team too, creating these different size consists that we have on the train to be able to accommodate a Padres train or to be able to accommodate some of the fair traffic has been phenomenal. That's not easy to do. If you've been out to the yard and you've watched them try to uncouple these trains, that's all day. It takes all day to do that. So kudos to the group who really reacted to those. And the fair was fantastic, and so I'm pretty excited about that. I already mentioned, but our hydrogen buses are on the way. Most of them are already here. Got a few left over that we got to bring in. We're optimistic about what that means for the fleet. We'll see once we're able to get them all out into service at the same time. We haven't been able to do that yet, only because our hydrogen fuel station isn't complete, but we'll get there. And that is all I had for today, other than Taylor did an amazing job sitting in as clerk of the board today. Suhail always does an amazing job. I don't want to make it sound like that's not a thing. But awesome job, Taylor. Nice work.
Thank you very much. Board members, anything else, comments or anything to report?
Yes, so at the LoSAN Executive Committee on July 8th, they reported a major milestone, 2 million riders for this federal fiscal year, which is for the first time exceeding 2 million gets us like at and above COVID. So that's really recovery that's so important within the industry. They reported 69,000 riders for May, which was also pretty healthy. And at the same time, it's worth noting that the coaster boardings for May were above budgeted goal at 15.3%. Or were above budgeted goal of 15.3% increase compared to May 2024. So we can beat our chests too.
Anyone else? All right, Taylor, do we have any remaining public comments?
No, we do not.
Okay, so just as a reminder, there will be no board meeting in August. So the next scheduled board meeting is September 18th at 2 p.m. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.